Some free agency updates coming out of Pittsburgh. The Steelers have signed 2 players to contracts and have let 5 other players leave in free agency. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have re-signed 2 wide receivers to their team and have let 5 other players go, one in which they traded for mid-season. But first, before I get more into who those players are, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also, like this video. Now, let's get right back into it. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers have re-signed wide receivers Ben Skowronek and Scotty Miller to a contract. And they've let go of 5 players. Quarterback Kyle Allen, wide receiver Mike Williams, who they traded for mid-season at the deadline, wide receiver Van Jefferson, linebacker Elandon Roberts, and defensive tackle in which they released earlier in the week, Larry Ogunjobi. So, before I get more into the players the Pittsburgh Steelers re-signed to their roster, let me go into the ones that they lost in free agency and give you a little bit update on the teams that they went to and the contract that they got. Some of these players are the ones the Pittsburgh Steelers wouldn't have re-signed in free agency anyway, so they end up on different teams. And these are the players I haven't covered yet so far during the free agency period. So let me start off with quarterback Kyle Allen, because this was the most recent addition of a player the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't re-sign. The Detroit Lions have signed the former Steelers quarterback. Kyle Allen is a player who played with the Steelers in preseason, was a third and kind of emergency quarterback this past season with the team, but now he ends up with the Detroit Lions as their backup and third option. Also, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they lose Elandon Roberts. What does this mean? Well, the Steelers weren't going to re-sign Elandon Roberts anyway. Apparently, they like Malik Harrison better because they signed him a few days earlier for a bigger contract. Elandon Roberts kind of does the same thing Malik Harrison does, but Elandon Roberts is older and doesn't really play special teams. So they decide to let him leave, not re-sign him, and he ends up signing with the Las Vegas Raiders on a 1-year, $3 million contract. So, he's now gone. He was a thumper. He was one of my favorite players to watch on the entire defense during his tenure with the Steelers. It's sad to see him leave, but wish him the best with the Raiders. So, let's move over to Van Jefferson, because Van Jefferson is a player who was the Pittsburgh Steelers' second string or third string wide receiver, however you want to look at it. And he played a lot with his team. And he ends up on the Tennessee Titans. He signs a 1-year deal worth up to $2.5 million. With the Titans, the Pittsburgh Steelers let him leave in free agency after making all these moves at wide receiver in terms of training for DK Metcalf and some other moves they just re-signed today that I'll get more into. So Van Jefferson is now gone. He did a decent job holding down the fort for the Steelers for the wide receiver spot, even though he was a 5th wide receiver the year before on the Atlanta Falcons, and he had to play a secondary role, second string, third string wide receiver, a big play increase. He did a decent job for having a play increase. So he signs with the Tennessee Titans. Now, looking at Larry Ogunjobi. Larry Ogunjobi is a player the Pittsburgh Steelers released earlier in the week to save around $7 million in cap space. And he got a big contract with the Buffalo Bills. Defense tackle Larry Ogunjobi signed a 1-year, $8.3 million deal with $8 million guaranteed. And this deal can reach up to $10 million with incentives. So Larry Ogunjobi gets cut by the Steelers, and he signs basically all of that money back with the Buffalo Bills. So it's like he didn't really even get cut. He just switched teams. So the Pittsburgh Steelers let him go, and he signs immediately with a different team. And me personally, he's a player I really liked. He was just never really fully healthy, but whenever he was, he actually was a really good defensive tackle. And he ends up on the Buffalo Bills after the Pittsburgh Steelers released him earlier in the week. So he's a player who's now gone. Also, looking at wide receiver Mike Williams. This is the final one I haven't covered thus far. Mike Williams is a player the Pittsburgh Steelers traded for at the trade deadline. They gave up a draft pick to get this wide receiver from the New York Jets, and he now leaves in free agency half a season later. He only played half a season with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's now gone. He ends up signing with the Los Angeles Chargers. And this is a 1-year deal worth up to $6 million. It's crazy how this works. The Pittsburgh Steelers were very interested in him during the free agency period last offseason, but he ended up signing with the New York Jets. But then they were really interested in bringing him along in the trade deadline and have trading for him because of the interest they had during free agency. But they let him go half a season later, don't end up re-signing him. I guess it's because of DK Metcalf and them kind of being the same built type of wide receiver, big play receiver, deep ball threat, and they didn't want to bring him back because of it, and add a kind of repetitive wide receivers to the roster. I guess that's the reason that they didn't bring him back. But you trade for a wide receiver for half a season for no reason, you let him go, and now he ends up with the Los Angeles Chargers. So it seems like the Los Angeles Chargers are actually signed every single Pittsburgh Steelers free agent. They signed Najee Harris, they signed Donte Jackson, the Pittsburgh Steelers cornerback, and now they signed Mike Williams. It just seems like every single wide receiver or every single free agent the Pittsburgh Steelers let go is a big name. They're just signing with the Chargers, and Mike Williams is another one. So he's the fifth and final free agent that I haven't covered thus far that has signed with a different team. Now we're caught up on all the Pittsburgh Steelers free agents that have left and signed with a different team. So now that we're done with that, we can move over to the players the Pittsburgh Steelers signed or re-signed at the wide receiver position, because Ben Skowronek and Scotty Miller have returned and signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers to come back to the team. So Ben Skowronek is a player I really liked and is a little tender with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was kind of injured for a little bit during the season, but during his playing time that he did have with the Steelers, he was a good player. He's a good run blocker, he's a good route runner, and he's just a really underrated receiver. He's also good in special teams. So Ben Skowronek is a player the Pittsburgh Steelers signed ahead of week 1 last season and had a key role on special teams, serving as a gunner. He also played 101 offensive snaps in 10 games, catching 5 passes, 69 yards. He recovered 2 fumbles while working as a gunner on special teams. He provides solid depth at wide receiver, and his role in special teams make him somewhat important to retain. Due to the Steelers' lack of reliable gunners last season, they had to bring Ben Skowronek and James Pierre in after they were cut from other teams. Both played well in Pittsburgh, and Skowronek will return to the Pittsburgh Steelers for the 2025 season. Last December, he said he loved playing in Pittsburgh, and now the feeling is mutual as the Steelers decide to bring him back for another year. Now, before I get more into the competition he's going to have ahead of him to make this roster, let me just go over Scotty Miller, because Scotty Miller has also signed a contract to return to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is a player the Pittsburgh Steelers brought in last season as well, and he's a player who's a veteran in this league, and he's 27 years old. Miller spent the 2024 season with the Steelers and played 13 games with 1 start, and he brought in 5 passes for 59 yards and 9 targets on the season. He signed a 1-year deal with the team last offseason and spent the 2023 season with the Atlanta Falcons under Arthur Smith. So that's kind of the reason why the Steelers brought him in, because of him being familiar with Arthur Smith. Scotty Miller, he played in 210 offensive snaps for the Steelers in 2024 and added 10 special team snaps. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers, looking at the battle they have ahead, these 2 receivers to make the roster. When you look at the Steelers wide receivers on the roster right now, you could basically lock in 4 of them. Calvin Austin, George Pickens, DK Metcalf, and Roman Wilson. You could basically lock in those 4. And the Steelers, they usually carry 5 wide receivers. Maybe 6, but more than likely 5 wide receivers, like they have recently. So that means that these 2 wide receivers and whoever else they bring in are going to have to fight for that final spot. And to be honest, Ben Skowronek has a better chance because he plays special teams. And Danny Smith has a big say in that. If he really likes you and what you do on special teams, you'll more than likely make the roster. So Ben Skowronek has 1 edge up on Scotty Miller, and it's because he plays special teams, and to be honest, he's an underrated receiver. He could do it when he's given the opportunity to play wide receiver. He did it when he was with the Los Angeles Rams, and every given opportunity he's had, he's shown out. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers have also cut Scotty Miller before the end of this past season, so also gives an edge to Skowronek as well, because he's never been cut from this team. Scotty Miller has, so Ben Skowronek has the edge up on Scotty Miller, but if they bring in another receiver, then we're going to have to wait and see how that wide receiver does as well. Anyway, this is your Pittsburgh Steelers update, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on these two re-signings of wide receiver Ben Skowronek and wide receiver Scotty Miller, and who do you believe or who do you want to make the roster between these two. Also, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below about the players the Pittsburgh Steelers lost in free agency and signed with different teams. Did you want them to bring back any of those guys who signed with different teams I just covered in this video, or do you just don't care and you're glad that they left? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And also, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, analysis reports, everything covering in free agency. I've either covered it already on the channel, so go ahead and watch it, or with the new players the Pittsburgh Steelers will sign in the coming days, I'm covering all that as well. All rumors are being covered as well on this channel, so this is your spot to stay updated with everything Pittsburgh Steelers during this offseason. So, with that being said, this is the end of the video. Make sure you subscribe, turn notifications, like the video, and until the next one, probably later on today if they sign someone else, I'll see you guys all later. I'm out. Peace.